isn't it? The warden standing in front of him spoke slowly. Another guard beside him was writing something down. Petty theft, murder, and worst of all, stealing a noble's treasured possession. Anything you want to say about that? End quote. Puck kept silent. The warden didn't care about his response and continued. Lady Alicia claims you had an accomplice. Who is he? I don't know. Smack. The warden's fist landed on Puck's face, sending him crashing to the floor. They weren't holding back at all. Puck could taste warm blood in his mouth. You think we're idiots? If you know what's good for you, you better talk. But Puck truly didn't know who the man in black was. They had cooperated, yes, but only as buyer and seller. He didn't even know the man's real face, just that he was rumored to have connections in the slums. Thinking back now, it was foolish of him to trust someone that shady. Beat him until he talks, another guard said, closing his notebook. Yes, sir. The head warden left the interrogation room, exhaustion written across his face. What's wrong, Ham? Is that prisoner giving you trouble? A different senior warden, Otto, walked over, slinging an arm over Ham's shoulder with a casual grin. Not really, Ham replied. Just an unlucky pickpocket who kicked the wrong hornet's nest. Then why not leave him and go drink? Same tavern, right? The girls there still miss you, you know. Come on, Sir Otis, we're still on duty. You're a longtime senior, you should at least try to act serious. I'm joking. Don't be so stiff, Ham. Here, this is a manpower request from the Ministry of Resources. Dodd takes spec. Otis handed him an envelope. Why is a manpower request being sent to the prison? Ham asked, confused. Shouldn't this go to the departments that actually handle labor? You're still young, Ham. There's a lot you don't know. The work the ministry does isn't as simple as you think. What do you mean? The Ministry of Resources manages dungeon resource extraction. And how do you think they extract resources? By relying on adventurers? Please. Those idiots only care about loot, and leveling up they're useless as a stable workforce. And outsourcing to adventurers costs a fortune. Then why use prisoners? Because they're free. Ham fell silent. Mining inside the dungeon is dangerous. One mistake and you die. No citizen wants to volunteer for that. But prisoners, especially death row inmates, just promise them freedom. And they'll jump into the dungeon like moths to a flame. Ham's expression darkened. This wasn't recruitment. It was indirect execution. Don't overthink it, Otis said as he walked away. You think what we're doing is wrong, but what about them? Besides, we will keep our promise. A pause. If they survive, Ham sighed, opened the envelope, and read the contents. A royal order. A list of selected inmates, almost all repeat offenders and violent criminals. Even if he protested, it would change nothing. At least the chosen ones were dangerous men who probably deserved their fate. Then he noticed something odd. The list required 50 prisoners, but there were only 49. And the deadline was today. That damned Otto, so careless, he groaned. Where was he supposed to find one more prisoner? Wait, hadn't they just taken in a new inmate today? Ham immediately thought of Puck. Though the Oliver family hadn't requested a formal death sentence, execution was unavoidable. Personally, Ham didn't think Puck deserved death, but the law was the law. Sending him to the dungeon gave him at least a slim chance at survival. All right, that makes 50. He pulled out a pen and wrote Puck in the final empty slot. 2 days passed since Puck's imprisonment. Before dawn, guards dragged him out of his cell. Frustrated but powerless, he grit his teeth and accepted his rotten fate. However, instead of the gallows, he found himself standing in a massive square. Not just him, hundreds of prisoners stood there, divided into 3 groups, surrounded by armored guards with spears. Are they sending us to war? A guard shoved Puck into one of the formations, then reported to the commanding officer. Sir, all prisoners are present. The officer nodded, expression cold and merciless. Filthy rats like you should all be dead already. He hurled insults and curses at them without restraint. The prisoners could only endure. Any sign of rebellion would mean instant decapitation. But despite being scum, His Majesty has granted you mercy. Enter the dungeon, extract resources for the Empire, and your past crimes will be forgiven. He pointed toward a massive stone arch behind him. It dwarfed anything Puck had ever seen. No physical gate, just two gigantic statues standing guard. Inside the arch, a swirling surface rippled like water, forming a vortex of shimmering energy around a dark abyss-like center. Could this be the entrance to the Albion dungeon? Puck's heart pounded. Excitement drowned out his fear. If I can find just one treasure, I'll never have to worry about food again. Then he noticed the prisoners' expressions. Some looked thrilled, others tense and terrified. "You fools," a gruff voice muttered beside him. "There's no such thing as free miracles." An older man stood there, though. His towering, muscular body showed nothing old about him. "What do you mean?" Puck asked. "Listen, brat," the man said. "You think dungeons only hold treasure? Monsters live there, hungry ones, and paupers like you go in empty-handed." He stopped, then gave Puck a knowing grin. A chill ran down Puck's spine. How could he forget such a basic truth? Damn it. This isn't mercy. It's a death sentence disguised as kindness. Nearby prisoners overheard and began murmuring nervously. A guard noticed, walked over, and kicked the old man to the ground before beating him brutally. "Watch your tongue." He tossed the man aside like trash. "You all right?" Puck whispered. Surprisingly, the old man stood up without a bruise. "Ha ha ha," he waved dismissively, as if nothing happened. But his eyes held something strange. Puck felt uneasy, but now wasn't the time to worry about others. He had to think about how to survive. No more delays. Move out. The prisoners entered the portal one by one. The moment Puck stepped through, a cold sensation wrapped around him, followed by dizziness. When his vision cleared, he was inside a vast, dim cave. "Commander, we've reached the 5th floor. The Mana Stone mine is a 15-minute walk from here." The officer nodded and ordered the prisoners forward. Puck couldn't help but stare in awe. A dark labyrinth of twisting tunnels. The only light came from the guards' torches. Occasionally, strange monsters appeared, slimy, rolling blobs. Tiny, green-skinned creatures wielding crude weapons. The guards dispatched them easily, giving Puck a shred of reassurance. He didn't know how long they walked before his legs trembled with exhaustion. Ahead, he heard the echo of pickaxes. A massive cavern opened before them, bridges of decaying wood connecting cliffs, mine carts filled with shimmering stones running along endless rails. Workers hacked at colorful gems embedded in rock mana stones of every hue. The sight was breathtaking. Mining instructions were simple. Dig up enough mana stones. Reality, however, was brutal. Despite their shine, mana stones were harder than normal rock. Every swing numbed his arms. After hours of exhausting labor, he'd only managed to extract a few. He secretly buried some small stones in a hidden spot. If he survived, he'd have something to start over with. Clang, clang, clang. The lunch bell rang. A long line formed at a food stall. Shouting erupted. "You kidding me? I break my back for this garbage?" The prisoner threw his tray, just a piece of stale bread and watery soup. "If you won't eat it, move," the cook said coldly. "You bastards." He lunged but was grabbed by armored guards and dragged away, no matter how fiercely he struggled. A clear message. Don't resist. The others obediently took their meager rations. The bread was rock hard. Puck soaked it in soup to soften it, but the mush tasted worse than anything he'd eaten in the slums. At that moment, every prisoner understood. There would be no freedom, no second chance. Only endless labor until death. The rebellious miner from earlier, no one ever saw him again. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and share. This is a great motivation for me to write more interesting news stories. See you in the next chapter.